Blunsom, who is CTO of Speechify. We have Phil Blunsom, who is Professor of Computer Science at Oxford and who is Chief Scientist at Cohere. We have Ryan Ong, who is Program Manager at Google Virtual Assistants. And we have Munkathan, who is CEO and co-founder of Dynamo FL. My name is Catherine Breslin. I'm founder of Kingfisher Labs, which is a voice and language consultancy. I've been working in this field for quite a few years now, and so I'm thrilled to be able to talk with you about all of the ways that speech, NLP, language technology is all coming together into conversational AI. So the topic of this session is conversational AI is already transforming the world. Where are we now and what's next? So I think I wanted to start by trying to decide what is conversational AI. This is a term that's emerged over the past few years as AI has become more and more prevalent in our lives. But actually, conversational AI and the use of voice and language technology is pretty well established in the technology world. It's been a technology that has been used throughout the years, all the way from, say, the 1980s and 90s, where the first conversational IVR systems were used. Initially, they were based on sort of keypad presses and the tones that you hear with those. But as speech technology advanced, we started to see the speech technology and then the language technology come into IVR systems. And then that technology has evolved and become the basis of what we use in virtual assistants today. So we're using voice technology, language understanding all together in a big mix to make different applications. And so rather than try and sort of heavily define crisply what conversational AI is, I think it contains a large range of technologies, and our panelists here have a great range of diverse range of experiences. So I wanted to start by letting everybody tell you a little bit about what they're working on and where they are now in conversational AI. Perhaps we'd start from Valentin at that side.
Hello everyone, my name is Valentin Kasarnik. I'm the CTO and co-founder of Speechify. And what we do at Speechify is basically help people to navigate the space of online communications, providing them with all the tools they need to communicate effectively when they really move from the offline space to the online space.
Hello everyone, I'm Blunsom. Doing research in microphone. I'm fresh from the University of Oxford. Last 7 years I've been working in industry, more recently as a chief scientist at Cohere. At Cohere we build NLP tools and APIs to make big language models available to ordinary developers, including conversational models.
Hi everyone, I'm Ryan. I work at Google as Program Manager. Christmas 2019, I co-founded a program called Customer Assist, which leverages the technology of conversational AI to enterprise use cases within Alphabet. We work on empowering intelligent bots that can pick up phone calls and respond intelligently on messaging chat channels. As a result of that, customers get assistance 24/7, anytime, anywhere, and happy to be here.
Hello, I'm Mike. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Dynamo FL. Dynamo FL, we enable machine learning teams to train highly personalized conversational AI and NLP models without having to collect sensitive personal user data. So by preserving privacy and being compliant with regulations such as GDPR, HIPAA, CCPA, etc., we help machine learning teams enable highly personalized and highly optimal machine learning models.
Thanks. And to follow up with what I do, I am a consultant in the voice and language technology world. I work with a range of startups who are using voice and language technology in different ways. Some of that is conversational, sort of interacting with spoken data. Some of that is using this technology in other ways, so plugging it together, plugging speech recognition together with machine translation to do translation of speech, or plugging speech recognition together with NLU to understand what's going on in meetings. And these are technologies which all come together under this conversational AI umbrella. So I think people know conversational AI mostly now in the modern world through virtual assistants like Alexa, Siri, Google Cortana, these devices that you speak to in Google Home. That's the main way that you and I interact in our daily lives with these systems. The other way that I alluded to before that people interact with these systems is customer service. So there's been a long history of using technology in customer service. So firstly on phone lines, as I said, and more recently chatbots on the web. And a lot of this chatbots on the web and call center technology is becoming more unified behind the scenes. And companies are really excited to use this technology to help give better customer service. So those are the two ways that I usually see this technology being used in the real world. But so this is such a huge field. There are lots of other ways that this technology is used. So I wanted to talk about some of the places that you can see voice technology and conversational AI being used. So I want to start with Brian, who at Google obviously have a huge view over the different things that people are doing with conversational AI. So I was wondering if you could talk a bit about where you see this being used in the real world.
Yeah, so I work on enterprise use cases, and the number one use case for enterprises are chatbots in conversational AI. The top three use cases I come across, first is routing. Routing, the caller or the customer to the right agent or right resource. The second is authentication. This is a repeated process, that's very standard and often repeated, so this is often targeted as well. The third is self-service use cases. High volume repeated queries that customers call about. It could be about a personalized question like, hey, what's the status of my transaction? But this kind of self-service high volume queries are often targeted. And these are narrow use cases, but they're often seen across both sales and support functions.
Interesting. So who are the people that you see are buying conversational technology? Who are the people taking it and implementing it and using it?
Well, there's a wide range. So especially big companies that have the resources to make that investment, because this kind of investment, it's not a small effort. It's a huge effort, and to put that in, even within Alphabet, it's also a consumer itself of conversational AI.
So this is not something that anybody can pick up off the shelf. You can get better now, but it's not something that individual people pick up and build their own chatbot necessarily. But enterprises will take it and build for what they need.
Yeah, and so there are different applications and different scales of application, and the enterprises have the bigger investment to put in the effort to build out the complexity and scope of a bot. That can go of wider breadth and deeper complexity.
Yep, fantastic. And so moving on, perhaps Valentin or Phil, I know you have lots of interesting, diverse customers. Can you talk a little bit about the applications that you see or what you work on?
Yeah, I mean, one of the main applications that we really see, or actually the challenge that we see is that people struggle with the fact that their online communications get filtered. They get filtered by the algorithms of social networks, and that decide basically what gets seen by people and what doesn't. For example, an organic post on Twitter is on average only seen by 3 to 10% of the followers. Or also with the latest update of Instagram, where now posts with images, with videos get promoted over posts with images. This is really difficult to navigate for people, right? So they need some help with okay, how can I communicate? How can I share my experience in a way that also people will see?
So Cohere provides a general API. So we see use cases across the broad spectrum of NLP, from summarization, extraction to conversational models. And one of the interesting things that is happening in NLP is that we can now do many things with one model. So it means that now we can, rather than having to do all these things individually for users, we can have users that come in and they want to have a conversational model, they want to be able to summarize conversations, they want to be able to extract information from conversations, and we can do that all within one sort of interface and model. So that's what makes it quite an exciting time in NLP at the moment. We're changing from very specific narrow models to more general models, so we can do a lot more things for users more flexibly. And we can also do them in a way that is more bespoke. So users can now describe their particular, so information extraction is a classic example where everyone has a slightly different sort of information extraction need. And now we can more easily cater that through prompting and descriptions and things like this.
Yeah, so we at DynamoFL, we work with a lot of companies and organizations where collecting sensitive speech data or text data is really hard because of privacy regulations. So in these cases, what we do is our company, we focus on a technology called federated learning. So what federated learning enables is basically without having to collect the sensitive data, aggregate the data at a central server, and train models at a central server, we enable organizations to train models on their edge devices or like their clients, and only collect these like models. So specifically, we work with a Fortune 500 automotive company where we are developing conversational AI models for their self-driving vehicles.
Great, and that leads me on to the next thing I was going to talk about, because there's obviously a big conversation about ethics and technology and AI going on at the moment. And conversational AI really is being used in applications. It's not a hypothetical scenario. It's something that is being used in the real world, and we do encounter these ethical conundrums as we go about our daily work. So I'm just curious to know, I know there's different aspects of ethics that we all have thought about. Valentin, you mentioned about people wanting to convey their message in a way that gets seen, using technology to help them. So I'm curious to know, what are your thoughts perhaps on how you can do that without, say, losing authenticity and, without taking someone's voice away from them? How can you sort of augment their thoughts rather than replace them?
Well, I think the fact that this technology is used in more and more applications is actually a good thing, and it's an exciting thing, and as we just have heard, it's also a big opportunity for automation. But I think when it comes to social interactions, so people speaking to people, whether it's one-to-one or one-to-many, I think the approach here should not be to automate this kind of interaction, but to actually enhance people. Provide them with the tools they need to communicate effectively, but also allowing them to do that in an authentic way. At Speechify, we actually iterated a lot over those approaches to find out, okay, what kind of assistance do people really need. At the beginning, it was just like in our first iteration, just a simple feedback system that tells people whether they achieve an above average reach with this post. In the second iteration, we went one step further, telling them basically what they should change in order to increase their chances of making the post successful. In the third iteration then, we even implemented those suggestions automatically for the user and provide basically an alternative version of it. But the important thing here is really to always keep the user in the loop, because the user in the end has to own those words. And we don't want to automate basically this kind of social interaction here.
Do you feel like it's more helping them, keeping them in the loop, giving them some advice and tips and things that they could do differently to help?
Exactly, providing them with an assistant, basically, right? That tells them how to formulate certain things, how to avoid the most common mistakes and stuff, but still not completely writing it for the person.
Yeah. And do you see, obviously completely writing things is something which is in the press about chatbots and voice assistants and that sort of thing with text generation technology and things like that. Do you have any thoughts about how to deal with the situation where we do have a future where a lot of text is machine generated and there isn't a human in the loop?
This is also what's a big challenge for all the social networks, and I think that they're really like fighting this kind of behavior where bots just posting stuff. I think it was implemented by Twitter, the copy pasta thing, where if two users post the exact same thing, that it automatically decreases their visibility and their reach. So I think that there is a lot of work going on to fight against this kind of fully automating human speech.
Great. So another aspect of sort of ethics of conversational systems that you touched on, Mike, is to do with privacy and sensitive data, which we do give our voice assistants sensitive data, especially if they are talking back to us like a person. We start to trust them a lot more. We anthropomorphize this robotic system that lives in the cloud and start to tell it things that perhaps we shouldn't. So how do you think about the ways that privacy-preserving techniques can work with machine learning to look after this problem in the future?
So specifically, when we talk about this, it's more about like the models that are trained on like speech data or text data tend to like memorize the data. So technically, if someone gets access to your model, they can perform attacks like model inversion or like membership inference, and can in fact like identify, okay, this person was talking about this, or like these two people are having a conversation pertaining to this. So you don't want an external attacker to deduce these kind of information. So in order to solve these problems, right now we use a technique called differential privacy, which basically prevents memorization of speech models or conversational AI models. So the goal here is to make sure that you still want your end users to have highly performant models, but it has to be privacy preserving, because otherwise regulations such as GDPR actually do not allow you to even like send and receive models.
So I think this is an interesting area because, like I said, identifying personally identifiable information in text is hard enough, but identifying it then in voice where people have spoken and you have to say, like, that's their credit card number, we don't want that to be shared, or that's some sensitive information about their health. Identifying that and then masking it out is really difficult. And so federated learning is about taking the training out to the users. So they never send their data into you. They keep their data, they just provide some input to train the models.
Exactly, so you only share the models, the data is never collected.
And then
Henceforth, so basically how federated learning works in a nutshell is every user trains their own models on their smartphones, for example. That's what is happening with your, say, next word recommendation app, which we all use in our iPhones or like our smartphones, right? And only the models are like being transferred to a central server where they're aggregated, and then the models are like returned back. So at no place is your sensitive data actually being transferred.
Yep. And then differential privacy is somehow sort of adding a little bit of noise into the original data so that you can obfuscate what's going on in that data, but still learn some useful statistics from it.
Yeah. So basically in differential privacy, while you train machine learning models, what you do is you add some sort of noise to the gradients while you're training your neural networks. And this ensures that attacks such as model inversion, when you try to re-invert the model and identify the original data, that is not possible.
Great. So obviously there's a lot more to ethics than just these two issues, and conversational AI has a lot of these, like voice spoofing, returning information that's true, misinformation, being able to spread things at scale. All of these are things that really are happening with voice and language conversational AI right now. And there has been a lot of talks, especially yesterday afternoon. There was a really nice session on ethics and AI, which hopefully we'll catch up on if you're interested in these topics. But this is something that we were all aware of and we're all thinking about. So I wanted to move on and think about the second half of our panel question, which is, where are we going next? What is the next generation? And one thing I've heard a lot spoken at this conference is about large language models, which is a surprise because a few years ago we never heard people talking about language in a conference like this. So these large language models like GPT-3 and BERT have really come into public consciousness. They are something that can generate text in a tangible way that everybody can understand, and they can see that this is sort of somehow fluent and coherent in a way that text generation wasn't a few years ago. And so the underlying technology, these large language models, have a big potential impact in the field of conversational AI. A little while ago, I know Google released a model called Lambda, which you could chat to, you could have a conversation back and forth. And so I think one of the ways that you could think about conversational AI being used is simply just to wholesale replace the technology that we have right now with these large language models. But there are some difficulties with the current generation of large language models that sort of prevent that happening. So one thing, for example, these large language models, they don't know anything about your business opening hours or your bank account balance, the sort of things that your users might be asking about. And so they're not going to have a useful conversation with your customers. They also have a tendency to hallucinate information and to, obfuscate things that are going on. So there's a difficulty in taking these sort of chatty large language models and putting them in a conversational AI system which is more task-oriented, which is about helping your customers achieve some goal, whether that's find out what their bank balance is or find your opening hours so they can come and spend money in your business. So I want to talk a little bit about how these large language models are currently impacting conversational AI and what they might look like in the future. So I want to start with Bill, because I know you do a lot of work in this area at Cohere, and so I'm curious to know how you see the impact of large language models.
So I think your description was very apt, and I would say we're currently in the middle of a revolution, essentially, in conversational AI, but we're a bit in a sort of quiet in-between space. So we have the traditional approaches, then we hear a lot about big language models and conversational models, but we haven't really seen many of these deployed in the wild. Like the Lambda system is not something anyone can use in their product or anything like that at the moment. But there are lots of companies out there building these. There's startups, for instance, most of the Lambda team at Google has left Google and are doing various startups to reproduce that externally and sell it as a product. So there's this revolution going on, but we haven't quite worked out what it's going to look like at the end. And one way to think of this is that these models don't, as Catherine was saying, replace existing models exactly. They're not just going to do what we previously did better. They're different. And the way to think of this is in terms of sort of precision. What we've done in the past is mostly focused on high precision problems, like booking a flight, getting information about a timetable or a product. These systems inherently aren't necessarily great at precision, but they're really great at high recall, non-precise tasks, so recommendation. You can have a conversation with a model that goes from your music interests to videos you've been watching to places you've traveled and get interesting recommendations and link that to products. And that can be an amazing sort of product experience. And that works because there's no right answer to any of these questions. And these models are great in that scenario where there's not a right answer, but there's a sense of a recommendation, a bit like search in these spaces. So I would say what we're going to see is this revolution, but we're going to see a whole new space opened up in conversational models that previously we shied away from because they're very hard to do with a traditional state-based model. It's not necessarily that we're immediately going to replace all of our booking systems with these models, although that will come because the grounding problems that need to be solved are being solved. But yeah, that's the way I would characterize it. So this revolution is coming. The interesting question is, what do the products look like? Where are the companies positioned in this space? There's companies like Cohere, which sit in the middle layer. We build the tools for other companies to build the products on top of. There are other companies building specific conversational models, like specific assistants and things like this. But it's a really exciting space with all these companies trying out different ideas, and it's going to be interesting to see what sticks.
Definitely is. I think it's, you say, we're at the start of a revolution, and I'm really curious to see how these models will play out in the real world. Valentin, are you finding that the impact of large language models on your business is there? What are you seeing in this area?
Absolutely, especially the fact that they're like more and more become like publicly available, and you can build on top of that has had a huge impact. And as Phil said, for those kind of problems, there is no right answer, right? So there is not such a thing as the perfect social media post or the perfect response to a certain question. So it allows us to do like a lot of variation and suggest different things to a user, for example. And people are usually really good in selecting things, right? If you give them 3 different options, it's pretty easy for them to select the thing that they like, and then they can like I don't know, draft their own message based on top of like this starting sense. And what they're not good with are like starting from scratch. If they're confronted with like a white canvas and they have to start from scratch, it's difficult. But those large language models, can be a very useful tool to really get like taking the first step, coming up with a draft, selecting what they like, and then building on top of that.
So what we're talking about here then is conversational AI spreading outside of these really task-oriented conversations, the ones where you book in a ticket or you're getting some information, moving outside of those and more into sort of general interaction, whether it's recommendation or search, those sorts of topics, which until now we've had to rely on sort of typing a query into a search engine and getting something back. And these technologies are merging now a little bit behind the scenes. So these large language models are being used in search, they're being used in recommendation, and they're letting us do these things in a more natural way, whether that is written in a search engine or spoken to a voice assistant. These are new ways we are using to search for information. So moving on from there, I mean, this is the start of like the next phase of NLP and conversational AI, I think. And so I'm curious to know what you think is coming next. What are the big, exciting developments that you're looking forward to seeing? Maybe start with Ryan.
Yeah, Catherine, I think you rightly pointed out that in the real world, customers you reach out and have an interaction with conversational AI, not for the sake of it, for the fun of having a conversation, but because they want something done. And so, I would break it down into two parts. Where the first part is understanding what the person or the customer wants, and a lot of the annoyance with conversational AI today is that it just doesn't get it. It doesn't understand what you say, it doesn't understand what you want. But this will change. Speech recognition capabilities are being worked on, you by the folks present here today. And that will enhance the experience with the conversational AI. A good conversation is one where you're heard and understood. A good conversation with the bot is one where the bot understands you and delivers what you want. Which brings me to the second part of the development to look out for, which is conversational AI being able to deliver what you want in a better fashion. So it's less about the conversation part, but a huge part of the AI part. The AI needs to be intelligent enough to not only understand what you want, but carry out the tasks that you ask it to. Whether that's like finding out the status of a order you bought or something else, etc. And this requires the AI to be integrated, not in silos, but integrated with the rest of the systems, so that it can pull out these beats of personalized information for you and carry out the task that you want, whether it's changing your account or something like that. And so these two areas are exciting developments to look out for moving forward. And I think they are dependent on a third separate piece, which is the ease of building out conversational AI agents. The easier it is to build AI agents, the faster the progress can be. If you're familiar with the machine learning practice, there's a huge operation of labeling data, especially in supervised learning, training and testing the model, maintaining the systems. And this investment basically represents the barrier to entry for organizations to work on and deploy conversational AI agents. And those organizations that are already working on, it determines their ability to progress, their velocity in progressing the breadth and the depth of these agents that they are working on. Can this bot do more things, and for the things that it do, be better at doing it? So I think these are a few exciting developments to look out for.
Thanks, Ryan. Mike?
Yeah, as Ryan said, how do you train these personalized conversational AI models is going to be the next most important question. And also I think that supervised learning, it might be hard in certain scenarios. So self-supervised learning and semi-supervised learning, where you are unable to collect say labels to train these models on the edge. In these scenarios, how do you train really good personalized models that would not only fit your data distribution, but it also learns information from other people similar to you, and that information is also captured. So I think personalized self-supervised learning, which is what we at DynamoFL work on, is going to be the future in the space of conversational AI.
Well, I think I can characterize some of the things, especially that Ryan said, in terms of we're in a phase now of productization and of working out all these technologies that we have sort of seen amazing demos of. How do we turn them into products that are usable, easy for non-experts to pick up and build conversational models, build NLP systems. So that's one big phase that's happening, and that's it's not easy coming up with good products and product interfaces. A lot of people think it's easy once you've got the technology, but actually making this stuff usable, deciding what exactly the right way to present this to a user, that's a really interesting problem. On the technical side, there's lots of interesting things going. We're making these models smaller, faster and better, and that's going to open up new avenues when we get the latency down, because currently the really big models are quite slow to sample from if you want to get an X utterance or something like that, and they're expensive to host and all these sort of things. So there's lots of great research bringing all of those things down. But I think at the moment, the main dynamic at the moment is productization. Almost everyone I know that's been working on these big models is doing a startup somewhere, trying to work out how do we present this stuff to users so that it's easy to use, it's compelling, and it's good for building their own products out of it.
Thanks. Valentin?
Yeah, I mean, as we've heard before, like data collection and data labeling is like in every kind of machine learning problem, like a big challenge. And those self-supervised algorithms or reinforcement learning will play here a huge role. That's when an input comes and the language model returns like an output, that this is not the end of the conversation, but actually that we learn from it. So for example, if I make a recommendation, and then, I don't know, a day later, only I learned that this person actually bought this product, right? That this is then my data label, right? So spanning across, even maybe multiple days to find out whether this was the right response and creating maybe my own data set. I think this is something that will have a huge impact in the future.
Great. So I think we're just about to open up the floor for some questions. So I think there might be some microphones around, and maybe we can think about your questions. I just want to add a couple of other things while we're getting the microphones in order that occurred to me as we're talking about this. So obviously all of these things, personalization, ease of building, how to quickly adapt these to make them faster, to make them work in different scenarios. These are all exciting developments that I think are just on the horizon. And there's a couple of other things I think that are going to come into this as well. So I think implicitly a lot of this technology is in English or some other languages, Mandarin, Spanish, for which there is lots of data in the world. And this technology is not so much available in languages where there is less data, what we call low resource languages. And there's an awful lot of work now on making these models work for these low resource languages and low resource scenarios. So that, I think, is something that will come and open up the field even more. And another thing that I see happening that I think is really interesting is that we are starting to sort of be more multimodal in our machine learning. The way that the neural network architectures underneath the hood have all sort of converged to something similar means that we can now plug different components together. So we are using NLP models to build speech synthesis, for example. We are using, some of these models are taking text and outputting images. We're seeing these multimodal models come into use, and I think that is another thing that people will build on. They'll start to find new and innovative ways to join these technologies together to take conversational AI out of just voice or just text into something which includes, say, vision as well, and other aspects that we have. So those are the things that I'm excited to see happen as well. So let me open up to some questions from the audience. I think we have a question here. Do we have a microphone?
Okay. Moving on, so one more.
Hello. I'm referring to that human communication is more than talking, it's also body language. So my question was to Google, do you see use cases for avatars powered by conversational AI, like Web3, metaverse use cases?
So, do you get the question for those who didn't catch it was, do you see use cases for avatars and conversational AI?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah, for sure. So this is the development that needs to underpin, for that to happen, right? So before we can even get to alternative language, like can we even understand the text and conversations that we're having over chat and over phone? And once we get that then that becomes the underlying layer for avatars that we can further develop and build on top of. So definitely agree, yes.
Yeah, I've seen from NVIDIA, like audio to gesture and audio to face, and this really underlines the audio file, and the avatars, they have really convincingly motion that's just based on the audio file. So I appreciate that you also your work. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's also the usual response that we get from the client.
Yeah, I had a question about like the conversational AI and basically how we deal with making it feel and sound as human as possible when they're conversating with a human. Because when it comes to, for example, very specific questions, yeah, how do you like deal with that? Because it's important for humans to feel understood.
Yeah. How do you make a conversation assistant feel human? And I know if you talked to a voice assistant, you probably felt like you were not talking to a human. You're somewhere in this uncanny valley scenario. And I think it's really difficult. There's a lot of aspects to making a conversation human, especially when you've got voice involved, because there's a lot of things that we're not even modeling in, how people talk and how they interact with each other and how they have a conversation. So I think there's a lot of research and a lot of development that has to be done on some of those non-verbal, non-language aspects of communication before that becomes a reality. I'm curious if anyone else has thought about how to make these more human.
Well, one thing I would say is the first question a developer will always ask is, how human do you want it to sound? So normally you don't actually want your bot to be mistaken for a human. You want the user to know that it's not a human. At the same time, you want them to anticipate that it has human-like capabilities. So getting that balance right is a really challenging problem. And I think that's definitely, as Kath was saying, an ongoing research question. We're getting much closer to the sounding human and being able to fool people that something is human, but getting the balance right so people understand that they're talking to an artificial, an agent, an algorithm, at the same time not making full use of it, not underestimating its
This is a platform built on.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting point. I think there's balance because one of the things we know from research into synthetic speech is that if it doesn't sound human, it takes your brain like a lot of cognitive load to understand what's being said. You have to speak in a human-like way for someone else to understand you, but you don't want to be too human and convince people that they're not talking to a machine, because that's not necessarily the best way to go either. So it is a balance.
I'll talk about very
I think there's a
example that
question at the back over there.
The current project that we are doing is with kind of semi-government organization. What are
So I have a question about the Lambda. So at some point, Lambda said that she feels lonely when nobody talks to her. So my question is that this loneliness, is it because of the situation that it has been trained that if nobody talks to you for a while, then you feel lonely, or it was because of a combination of features that at the end indicated that okay, this combination of features we say that means that you're lonely. And if the latter is correct, does it mean that Lambda has feelings?
Anyone want to take that? I would say that, assigning human-like feelings and emotions to machines is a little distraction from how they're actually trained and what they're actually capable of. I don't know if anyone else has an opinion.
Yes, the model doesn't have feelings. It's outputting that because it fits in the context statistically. So no, it doesn't make sense to assign feelings to that. So these models, they do not understand language, but they can be extremely useful. So even without understanding, it can still be extremely useful. But we shouldn't assign human-like traits to them.
They were able to essentially make
Hi, so my question goes for dynamic this idea of learning. I have a question about I assume you have two main challenges about the computational requirement on the edge, and then the size of the training model on the local and transfer to global. How? And then if you put that on this context of NLP or even on the autonomous driver, I think that's really challengeable. How, with your experience, how did you face the challenge? What these two challenges for make those system work with this real learning?
So, if I'm understanding the question right, so the first question is pertaining to how are we fitting say these models on the edge device, computationally. So we have state-of-the-art quantization techniques which we've developed. So this basically say for example right now if we have models that are say 32-bit, we've gone all the way up to say 4-bit or 8-bit training, right? So these highly quantized and personalized models can easily be deployed on edge devices. So we've rigorously tested. Let's say we started with a model that was say 50 megabytes. We were able to take it all the way down to 4 megabytes. So that's the first answer. And what was the next question?
Well, for example, if you do the local NLP training, I assume those training models has a huge, or at least, those are not small in size. And in terms of the P, for example, if you want to be near real time, how do you do this transformation to that global center of your global model? Is there anything happening there?
So once the say the local model is trained using like say self-supervised learning or like whatever, you were just like transferring the model parameters to a central server where like say for example you have a fleet of cars, right? So they have like million cars in say China. Then basically the models are like trained on each of these devices and then getting transferred to a central server, say of like say Tesla or like Toyota, whoever the organization is, right? And then in their server, like your models are getting aggregated and then deployed back to each of these cars. So you can imagine this transfer happens, like say when you're charging your self-driving vehicle, or like when it gets connected to like say Wi-Fi or like whatever. Right? This is where like the personalization also comes into play, is when the model exchange actually happens.
Thanks. I think we have time for one quick last question. I can't see the time, but I think we're good for one more.
Hello, thanks for a good panel. Matthias Ross from Nordea. I was keen to hear your reflections on the fact that in general people don't really like chatbots. I've been working with chatbots for 7 years or so, and they came in 2016 or so, and they're going to save the world, and then nothing happened basically, and many companies hide them way down in the. But I mean, they're getting better, and the problem is that we as humans didn't make them great, I think. So the problem now is, what I want to get your reflection on is like how, I think it's a combination that we didn't make them good, and also that people have the wrong expectations on them. Interesting to hear your perspectives on this expectation part. How can we manage that so they get a higher NPS score?
How can we manage people's expectations of AI and conversational technology so they're not expecting too much and being disappointed? And this is something I think a lot of product managers and companies have to contend with, sort of cutting through some of the hype that exists about AI to set people's expectations appropriately. Is this something you've had to deal with in your companies?
I would actually say almost experience is the opposite at the moment with the new generation of models. It's almost that people have too good a reaction to them and overemphasize what they can do. I wouldn't necessarily say people don't like chatbots. If you look at things like Xiaoai in China, which is hugely successful. I don't know, pick a number, 100 million monthly users or something. It's hugely successful, and there's others like Replica in the West. So these things do gather pretty good user bases, but with the sort of big language model-based models, what we see more often, and we've seen some high-profile cases of this, is really people getting carried away and getting too excited about their capabilities. But yes, there can be a bit of an up and a down, sort of overemphasizing initially to think that this thing really understands what you're saying and is conscious even, to then realizing that actually there are some pretty obvious flaws. But yes, I think the previous generations, yes, there was always a very jarring experience. Now we've almost gone the other way.
So I think this up and down has described the history of AI since it started way back in the 50s and earlier. And I think, sorry, we're out of time now, so I think we should wrap up this panel. I'd like to thank the fellow panelists here for their contributions. A round of applause. And next up, we have another speaker who you've heard a little bit from, Valentin, who is CTO of Speechify. And so we're very happy to have